Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new World of Warships gameplay today on our channel. In this episode I'm sailing out in the Tier 6 Japanese heavy cruiser, known as the Aoba, in a Tier 7 Standard Battle on the map Estuary. The focus of today's gameplay is trying to get the most out of our stock ship. The reason I wanted to do this is because I've got a lot of ships at the moment that I need to get upgraded, and I've really not been having the motivation to get them upgraded, as many players do not, for the simple reason: who wants to upgrade a stock ship? Of course, the end result is you get a fully upgraded ship and you can start making your way towards the next ship in the tech tree, but getting those upgrades can feel like a chore, and when you don't have those upgrades on your ship, or modules I should really say, it feels as though your ship's at a disadvantage. Well, this gameplay is all about getting around that disadvantage, as our stock Aoba, it doesn't have the B-hull, it doesn't have the range extension, we do have all of our upgrade slots fitted out, such as the aim systems modification 1, and on top of that we do have a 10-point captain. Now, having these requirements in place, i.e. the upgrades and a 10-point captain with concealment expert, allows us to alleviate some of the issues to a degree. But what we have to consider is that's not going to fix everything. Now, the key item I'm going to be picking up with the ship we're using here is the lack of range on the 8-inch artillery pieces. As you can see, it's 13.6 kilometers. When upgraded, it will go to 14.9 kilometers, which isn't great for Tier 6 cruisers, but it's much more useful than what we currently have. And this will lead to an immediate problem, as we're going to see down the eastern side of the map, and that is I cannot control my engagements. Now, you may be wondering at this point, what do I mean? Well, as we come past the landmass off to our port side, watch what happens. I'm immediately detected. Now, that's got to be an enemy destroyer. You may be thinking, so what? Well, this means the enemy cruisers, such as the Budyonny, the Tier 6 Soviet cruiser, and on top of that the Lagzinier on the enemy team, which have significantly more range than my own ship, even when stock, will be able to shoot at me from beyond the range of my guns. And with the Akatsuki continuously spotting me, or they could be continuously spotting me if they don't decide to go to their smoke shortly, this puts me in a very difficult position. Now, if this wasn't an open water scenario, I could creep towards the enemy team and close the distance so this wouldn't become a problem. But in order to close the distance here, I've got to essentially travel over 10 kilometers of open water and have the threat of being continuously spotted by the enemy Akatsuki in order to get close enough to these enemy cruisers and whatever else lies ahead to either take them out or chase down the Akatsuki and take it out. Now, you may be wondering, well, why not go after the destroyer? Even at these ranges, the guns are accurate. Well, the problem is, for me to keep the Akatsuki within decent range, I'm going to need to pursue, as whilst I have a top speed of what is 35 knots, I'm not going to be as fast as that Japanese destroyer. So immediately what we have to consider is we can only play in a kiting role for the time being, get a little bit closer, draw some attention, do some damage, pull back, rinse and repeat, as we pick up a nice set of hits down the Akatsuki, taking away a considerable chunk of their health. The torpedoes I threw were just in case the enemy Akatsuki decide to stay in their smoke to try and push them out of the smoke, or heaven forbid, hit them whilst they're sitting still in their smoke. And while our Farragut pushing up, unfortunately we're not able to support the Farragut as they pushed up very close to the enemy team's positions, and it means they're going to be at a key disadvantage as time goes on and they'll be worn down shortly. So in the meantime, I'm deciding to look at the enemy Budyonny and potentially hit their broadside with some armour piercing, which with its citadels will do 4,700 damage per citadel. Now, in the meantime, I am keeping an eye on the minimap and thinking, will the Akatsuki come down towards me? Well, now I've made the mistake of firing on the Budyonny, that's going to tell the Akatsuki I'm coming for them, or give them the impression I'm coming for them, and they'll start to turn away shortly, potentially throwing torpedoes my way in the process. Now, this means the Akatsuki will once again travel outside of my reach, and therefore I won't be able to bring them down unless I go into a long pursuit. But note now I'm right on the eastern edge of the map, which means if I decide to pursue, I have to expose my broadside to the enemy cruisers off to what would be my port side, or towards my western side, in order to be able to chase the Akatsuki and keep the ground. Therefore I have to give up on this, and now I'm immediately thinking to myself, right, disengage completely now, have the Hydra on just in case the Akatsuki did throw the torpedoes, haven't deployed it straight away because I know the torpedoes are going to take some time to get to me, and let's change up our position on the battlefield. Now, how do I go about doing that? Well, I have to look at the minimap and understand what is my team lacking right now. Our team's got a lot of ships on the eastern side, but look at how things are degenerating on the western side. Particularly what of the exposed Matsuki on our team, having to go at it alone against the Furitaka. We've got a couple of ships in our base right now, but not too many, and we've got a large gap appearing in the centre of the map. And what are the enemy Ohotnik, the enemy Fuso, the enemy Koenig, and the enemy Atlanta seemingly looking towards the centre, albeit the enemy Atlanta's pulling back to support their Ryujo for the time being. This is where the gap lies, and I need to move into that position to fill the gap. And by going towards the centre, I'll be reducing the chances of an open water engagement, because there's a lot more land masses towards the centre and towards the two bases than there are out on the eastern or the western sides of the map. So this will work to our advantage. Now in doing this, one has to consider the fact that I have Concealment Expert here and therefore a detectability by sea of 10.3 kilometers gives me the ability to fast track my way towards the centre. If I had weaker concealment in this ship or another ship, what I'd be doing is moving southwards towards our friendly York off to our port side currently, and then making my way towards our base. This is the only difference. Another thing you may be asking at this point, how do I decide whether to charge down the centre line, either horizontal centre line, so between grid lines E and F, or alternatively, how do I decide to go towards our base and then move northwards towards the centre? Well, it's all about what traffic's coming through the middle at the time, and that's going to be decided for me very shortly when we spot the enemy Fuso. Now when that's spotted, what that's going to tell me is going through the centre right now is going to be suicidal. But in return, this is an important moment, in the fact that with the Fuso being so aggressive, and the fact that our team seems to be reacting to it, including myself, it means we can start to hurt the enemy Fuso and try to encourage them not to push all the way through. And this is where, by putting some pressure on this enemy battleship, what we end up doing effectively is deterring their push. Now they do have an Ohotnik with them, and there's a smoke screen there which the Ohotnik has mostly laid. And what one has to consider is with the Fuso taking considerable hits and potentially returning fire, they'll be detected even if they decide to creep into that smoke, because of their detectability upon firing through smoke being considerable as they're a battleship. So as we continue to throw in the shells, we're going for a fire. We'll have our base fire chance of 17%. We'll pick up a fire eventually. If that fire can stick, as we're seeing, we'll start to tick off a load of health. Albeit it actually looks as though they've put the fire out. Perhaps we'll get one or two more fires if we continue to drop shells in. If not, not to worry, at least we've burned out their damage control party considerable for one of our teammates to exploit. Now in a position at this point we can throw in a couple more salvos, or at least a couple more shells, as our teammates also do so. And looking at the minimap, what we can see is our team are starting to move back towards the centre as well. They've given up on the eastern side push. And this isn't a bad thing because we're with our team and therefore we've got the main crux of firepower on our team still together in one cluster. It does mean that our map control starts to fall apart here, and this is where filling the gaps and recognising the gaps will become more prominent. Because what we have to keep in mind is, whilst the teams are equal in number of ships, the enemy team has the ability to cover a lot more ground now and therefore hit us on multiple sides, and this is what we need to shut down. Now looking at the minimap, what we can see, the enemy team right now has the ability to split our team in two, particularly our Matsuki and Akatsuki who are pushed westwards, and there's an enemy Koenig, and we will see shortly that an enemy destroyer is also going that way, cutting off our Akatsuki in particular, and that means that our ships on the western side have no means of getting back to our ships on the eastern side. In return, in seeing this, I'm now going to move towards the centre to try and do the same to the enemy team. And as we do, let's talk about the Ohotnik and what I'm going to do to get around this problem. With the Ohotnik, what we can see is they've anchored themselves in a position where they're on a corner, not being too aggressive to push into our base because they're aware of a considerable number of ships off to what would be their port siding coming around the corner, our cruisers and our Normandy in particular. But what one has to consider as well is the fact that I've thrown up my catapult fighter is to keep the enemy Fuso spotted, that the detectability by air is not too good, and with the Ohotnik being perched there, they will eventually come into my field of fire, or the fact that I can arc my shells over the landmass. Now if the Ohotnik decides to push back, we deterred them from pushing for the time being. Alternatively, they decide to push round, as they're reversing round right now, then it means we can really start to lay into them. Or at least we can hope to, what if the accuracy of our guns, albeit the Ohotnik's low profile in the water, will make them difficult to hit, as we pick up 1100 damage there. And the Ohotnik seems to have gone fully for it at this point. They weren't reversing, they were going forward, and it means that we'll return fire as we come around the corner here. We'll get them within spotting range. We turned on our Hydro, we've been saving it for closing the distance with this enemy destroyer, as whilst they have 4 kilometer torps, if they decide to rush us they could be lethal, and let's get them out of the game completely. As we score a couple more hits and disable their torpedo tubes temporarily, and our friendly York is also backing us up as the enemy destroyer is about to fall. Now having done this, I'm going to immediately turn northwards, because what I need to do now is shut down the enemy team's ability to reunite the forces on the west with the forces on the east. Now they could travel all the way round back into their base, so I go northwards and rotate around. That will take time, that will take say 2 to 3 minutes, and that will bleed time out of the game, which is perfect. And we really need that right now because our team's at a slight points disadvantage. So we need to start getting into the superior positions versus the enemy team. and then moving towards the centre and cutting off the two sides. It means if the enemy team decide to use the centre to ferry ships through, I can be there to start countering it, or at least applying some pressure. So whilst our role hasn't been too significant so far, and this has been a rather boring game compared to other games I've played, it's starting to build up a bit, and this is where the stock nature of our ship isn't going to hold us back. Because note now that we're moving towards the land masses, the lack of range in our guns is not going to be a problem, and at the closer ranges we can start to really make things count. Of course, I'm keeping an eye on the map to see if there's any potential counter places, because in case the enemy team do decide to counter me, they'll take me out of the game or really cripple me, and I have to be mindful of my limited health as we do in all ships. But it looks as though the enemy team do not know what my intentions are, and we can also see our friendly Aoba pushing up this way as well to support. The Atlanta is coming through the middle right now, and this is where we're going to cut them off, and they probably weren't expecting us to be here ready to start laying into their broadside with our armour piercing shells. And if we're able to get through, remember it's 4,700 damage per citadel. As we pick up 4 penetrating shells, dealing 6,200, that's a meaty salvo already, cutting into their rather lacklustre health pool at tier 7, and let's try to punish them even more with our front guns, where the ABX configuration, our AB turrets, are going to work here. Picking up a citadel then, smoke penetrations. Unfortunately our friendly Aoba sinks to the bottom of the deep blue sea at the guns of the Atlanta, but here we can really lay in with 2 citadels, and the Atlanta falls to our friendly Bayern, who rips into their broadside. Now you note here I'm a little bit cautious of pushing too far forward straight away, just in case the Atlanta used their 4.5km range torpedoes to try and bring us down, but I would have seen them most likely by now or very shortly if they had launched them, so I'm not too worried at this point. And here I'm continuing to move forward because remember the enemy Budiani who repositioned north of the centre point? Well, they've been considering pushing down, but the fact that I'm now here has deterred them from pushing down, because the Budiani does not have too much health on the enemy team, and going against a contest with myself, they may have the faster firing 6-inch guns, but if I angle appropriately, they'll only be able to use high explosive, and I can use my high explosive, and I'll simply burn them down through sheer alpha strike damage. Well, Lagos in the air, starting to push down the eastern side, exposing the broadside to myself. I'm hoping to pick up some citadels, release some penetrating shots, but unfortunately things are not going to work out too well here. 2 over penetrations and 1 penetration that did no damage, for example. Now that Lagos in the air is starting to rotate away, this is a key point of frustration because I was really hoping to get some nice damage in. But never mind, at least we've made them turn away. We've countered their potential push down the eastern side. And that's what it's all about sometimes, just being in the right position to make the counter play. And the Lagos in the air now has to blunt their attack, they have to pull back, they're taking damage in the process of moving into the kiting position, and meanwhile I can start to set up my defensive line. Because what we can see is with the elimination of the enemy Atlanta, the points now have equalised somewhat. Our team's still down by 8 points, but it's not a considerable deficit anymore, and it means the game can start to swing one way or the other. Unfortunately, we are being spotted here by a spotter aircraft, most likely the Budianis, but is this too much of a problem when we think about it? Well, not really, because it's only going to discourage the enemy ships from pushing through, because what they have to think about is the fact that I have torpedoes, which can be absolutely lethal when they strike the target, albeit we have very limited torpedo traversal arcs, aiming towards the rear of the ship in a radar style configuration, but at the same time it's still a potential deterrent to the enemy team's push. And I'm ready to counter the Budiani, or alternatively counter the enemy New Mexico if they decide to go this way, as unfortunately we lose our Akatsuki to the Budiani. Now we become unspotted at this point because our friendly carrier takes away the spotter plane, and now I can start to think about making the push. Looking at the Budiani, I'm keeping my eyes on them, with our fighter squadron from our carrier keeping them spotted. I'm keeping an eye on the torpedo indicator, pardon me, to see what the Budiani is going to do. And what it looks as though they're about to do is actually start pushing around the corner. They're building up their speed. Our Yang takes out the enemy Koenig, which gives us the points advantage somewhat, and now the Budiani decides to make the push forward. But remember, by being here, I'm blunting that potential attack. I need to angle appropriately, so as the Budiani can really rip into my limited health pool, but at the same time, by being here, it means they're not going to be able to use this potential avenue to get through and deal the damage they want to do. Or even if they want to move out towards the east, I'm here to hurt them for doing so. Now throwing down my torpedoes here, not necessarily to hit the Budiani, because they may have hydroacoustic search available, but this will force them to turn back towards the landmass north of them, and it can cause them to beach, or alternatively put them on a straight line path. And in return, as we're now becoming detected by them, we can start to lay into their broadside for armour piercing. Experimenting here with the potential penetration angles, as we can see the majority of our shells bounce, and getting used to the armour piercing shells on this ship. The Budiani hasn't got too much health, and with some shells going in from our friendly bind, we're going to finish them off. Picking up a citadel to finish them. So that's the Budioni out the game now. And remember, those torpedoes with their 10km range, they can carry through to the eastern side of the map. And if the enemy Akatsuki was retreating at that point, they may even clip the Akatsuki. So that's the power of our torpedoes and the fact they allow us to constrict enemy avenues of movement. Now here I've been briefly spotted by the enemy air glare, and that immediately tells me that it's got to be the air glare. Because no other ship, unless it's the Akatsuki coming down the eastern avenue in towards the centre, no other enemy ship would have a line of sight to spot me. And the air glare was in the most considerate position to spot me from that point in time. Therefore we're going to guess, we'll say 75% certainty it was the air glare, and it's confirmed as they spot our biome, or they're spotted by our biome, and the enemy New Mexico's got their guns pointing the complete opposite way. So we're going to try and set some fires and get some penetrating shells in at this point. If we can get a fire in particular, it's going to help. And you can see here I'm experimenting with armour piercing to see how much damage it can do. Nice meaty amount there, 4,500 almost. But I'm going to start rotating down towards our biome because the air glare is going to push towards them. And you'll see shortly in chat that I've recognised this and I want to help our biome out by saying to our biome, look, let me come to support you. Because I'm reasonably fast, I can get there in good time. And with the smoke screen being set up, the biome's going to be at a huge disadvantage in the fact the air glare can choose when they want to push out of the smoke to charge down our biome. In the meantime, as we're making our way towards our friendly battleship, I'll keep throwing in some fire on the enemy New Mexico if I get the opportunity. There is a fire that has stuck on them that we've set. We can see our damage ticking up. We're throwing another salvo here just to try and get a second fire potentially, or do some more raw alpha strike damage for our high explosive. But otherwise we're just travailing our way towards the enemy air glare's last known position, i.e. the smoke screen. We're spotted, they must be coming out of the smoke, and here they come towards our biome. Unfortunately, our biome's travelled a little bit too close, meaning that French destroyer is going to cause problems, but we can be there to assist. Albeit here I don't give enough lead on my opening salvo and do very little to no damage. My mistake, getting used to the guns. But now that the air glare is getting closer and closer, and we can start to provide the right amount of lead, we can start to really lay into them. Unfortunately with that, our biome does take a load of torpedoes and they're down to minimal health, meaning the air glare is going to finish them off with the second set of torpedoes, but we will get revenge for them. As we set in another set of shells, the air glare is on its last legs, picking up our Confederate along the way, and now we're going to finish them off. I must admit I made the mistake of perhaps not getting there fast enough, but at the same time, the enemy destroyer is now out of the game, and that's a key asset the enemy team eliminated. So the only thing that's left is a New Mexico that's surrounded on all sides, both in terms of on the high seas and also up in the sky. Now the only thing I need to do at this point is make my way towards the enemy base and get in a position to attack the enemy New Mexico or start to capture the base, support my teammates. Otherwise my role in this game is over, and I will clarify that this game pretty much comes to an end at this point. The New Mexico gradually goes down to the combined fire of my teammates, and it's really worth us now making our way over towards the post-game stats. So whilst perhaps not the most exciting of games, it was a victory nonetheless. And we can see that our battle performance amounted to a total damage output of 76,132 HP, and along the way we picked up the Confederate Heroic Achievement for damage at least 6 enemy ships, where damage caused to each ship must exceed 20% of a normal health pool. In coming on to the team scores, we can see that we topped our team by a small margin in terms of base experience earned, picking up 1,817. This game took us some time to get into, as our opening gambit down the eastern side was not successful due to the enemy Akatsuki spotting us in an open water engagement. The lack of range on our artillery pieces meant that we could not contribute to. So instead we had to recognise this and realign our position on the map to better suit our team. And then in the end that was supporting and defending against any potential pushes through the centre. And once we prevented the push by the enemy Ohotnik, moving in towards the centre to contain the enemy team and using it as an avenue to move ships around, particularly the enemy Atlanta and also their Budioni, before using the centre as a means to reposition ourselves in order to be able to set fire to the enemy New Mexico and take out the air glare. And by recognising this and adapting your tactics accordingly, this means that stock ships can become much more enjoyable. And this also serves to highlight how sometimes it will take 1 or 2 games for you to understand how a stock ship is going to play out, even when fully upgraded. And I actually felt, what with this being my 3rd game in the Aoba, that from this point onwards, where I'd actually got all the upgrades by this point, I decided to use all my experience in one go, that this game acted as a template for my usage of this heavy cruiser when fully upgraded. And I've been applying very similar principles in terms of positioning and overall handling characteristics of the ship, and I've been enjoying some good results with this ship so far. In coming on to our detailed report, we have one key item to note here, and that is the amount of damage we cause to our main battery. We can see that it's split roughly evenly between our high explosive shells and our armour piercing shells, And this is again an indicator of where I've been experimenting with the different shell types over the course of the game to try and get the most out of the armour piercing and subsequently the high explosive. A learning experience which will benefit me as I play the ship more and I try to make my way towards the Tier 7 successor, i.e. the Miyoko. And finally, coming on to our credits and experience earned, we can see that after additions and deductions, we walk to have 357,568 silver credits and 5,533 commander experience. To conclude, hopefully today I've demonstrated that while sailing stock ships in general in World of Warships can be a bit of a miserable experience simply because you're not playing the ship when it's fully upgraded and at its full potential, using this time in order to better understand the ship and try to get the most out of it in preparation for when you have it fully upgraded is actually quite a rewarding experience. And to get around the handicap that's placed on you with the lack of modules that you've got attributed to the ship, you need to use game and map awareness to understand where you can better fit in to support your team. Because it's not going to be expected that you'll have to carry your team, particularly when you do have stock modules equipped to the ship. Instead, by putting yourself in the right place to get the most out of what you have, you can make a considerable difference to your team. And we saw that in today's gameplay. The opening half did not go so well as we tried to contest a situation which was going to really work against our stock qualities. But as we recognised this and moved ourselves into a better position, particularly the centre of the map, we were able to find ourselves in a position where we could really make the difference, and it goes to show that whilst you may be stock, you're no less significant. And so I've been TX141, and if you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future World of Warships videos on my channel. And as always, if you're looking to get into World of Warships today, ladies and gentlemen, feel free to do so using the link in the description of this video. It's free to sign up, and what have you got to lose? With that, take care, and until next time, as always, fair seas.